Hello and welcome to a new podcast from the Belt and Road Institute in Sweden. My name is Hussein Askari. Today is Tuesday, July the 9th, 2025. Yesterday, as you saw in our channel, we had an interview with Professor Italo Poti from Brazil to discuss the outcomes of the very interesting, exciting summit of the BRICS nations or the BRICS Plus. And as part of our discussion, we also took up the question of the connection of Latin America or South America to the Belt and Road Initiative. Although the Belt and Road itself is not taken up within the BRICS framework, but it's affected by it. Yesterday, we got the news, from Brazil that Brazil's Transport Ministry announced on Monday, July the 8th, that it has signed a memorandum of understanding with the state-run China Railway Economic and Planning Research Institute to initiate technical and other studies for the construction of a bioceanic rail corridor, which will link Brazilian port of Ilhéus on the Atlantic coast with Peru's Chancay mega port on the Pacific Ocean. That's why it's called Bioceanic, Atlantic coast connecting to the Pacific coast. China and Peru inaugurated the Chancay Port with great fanfare in November 2024, according to the reports. The rail corridor means that China's Belt and Road Initiative has finally arrived in big way in Ibero-America. Now, Peru, although not present at the BRICS summit officially, but it has a very important role to play. And to discuss that, we have with us from Peru today, we are honored to have Mr. Carlos Jaico. He's an international lawyer and a former chief of staff of the Peruvian presidency to discuss the Peru and this fantastic news we received today. Thank you, Carlos, for joining us today.
Thanks a lot, Hussein. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you very much. Of course, the news of the Chancay Port last year was very important. We had ourselves some report and discussion. We also met in China, you and I, on the sidelines of an international conference on the Maritime Silk Road. So it's a pleasure to see you again and get our viewers to get a share of your insights and views. But first of all, I know that you have launched in Peru the Belt and Road Institute in Peru, which is very exciting news.
And, yes, there is a Belt and Road Institute here in Peru, and the Institute of Government has this Belt and Road Institute, and they are, dealing with interesting questions, fundamental questions about how this Belt and Road Initiative, which is fantastic for all the development of these countries, is coming to South America, for example. And we see as an example with this corridor from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean, which is going to be a really interesting project for the development of South America. This idea was, in the heads of many politicians and as well interested people since many years ago.
I have a map which I also saw many years about the integration.
Right.
We can show it to our viewers here. The integration of the South American, the whole continent, with railways, highways, and connecting and industrial zones, agricultural zones. But this is a very old idea, and it never was materialized. But what makes it more realistic today to get it done?
So realistic today is that we have now, as China helping to be this project a reality. That's the difference. And, it was a question about investment as well. And two countries, Peru and Brazil, has never been, talking directly about this project. But now within this frame of BRICS and the Bank of Development, I think we could see that there is something real, concrete about this project, which is, as I am telling you, we have been thinking about it because in South America we have to see geopolitically how the Peru and Brazil plays a really really important role, and they have been working together, but not in this kind of projects. This is the moment where both countries are going, slowly but surely about
Yeah.
this integration, which is needed.
Right.
It definitely is needed.
Yeah, we will come to the question of security and geopolitics later, because the fascinating idea with the Belt and Road is that it can connect nations and peoples and economies in a win-win fashion. There is no zero-sum game
That's right.
here, and the integration of the whole South America. There are, I think, 22 nations in South America and the Caribbean are now members in the Belt and Road Initiative.
Hmm.
Panama was forced by the United States to leave, but that is not such a major issue. But first of all, I would like to you give our viewers an idea about the Chancay Port itself, why
Hmm.
it is so important for Peru, why is it important for the rest of South America, and also, of course, for China.
Hmm.
The scope of this project, how important it is, and if there are other projects integrated with like railways, highways to develop the rest of Peru.
That's right. That's right. It's going to come, as we say, is in the pipeline. But the first thing it was the Chancay Megaport, and this Chancay Megaport is the, let's say, first stone of development of the region. Why? Because we need a megaport to connect South America with all the countries of Asia. And we didn't have this kind of infrastructure till now. But not only this, all the products from, for example, Brazil, could now come to the Pacific Ocean and goes to Asia as well. And we have a lot of things to export and as well to receive from Asia and South America. We didn't have this possibility till now, but with the railroad, the railway is going to be really a huge important element to help this kind of trade and commerce between, two continents, South America and as well, Asia, with all these possibilities of development for our countries. That's really important. And we have thinking about it, but we couldn't have this kind of help to tell us, now you have to do it. We could find the money to do it, the investment to do it. And I think this is the moment. I know, and you know, that Peru is not part of BRICS, even BRICS Plus. But, Peru has now all the interest to go on discussions with Brazil, and why not sign a MOU to have these discussions further. But because now there is no more, let's say, restrictions or any kind of things that blocking these projects. So now I think is the moment where Peru and Brazil has to join together and work in this project.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. There is as we always emphasize in our work on the Belt and Road, the economic belt of the Silk Road is not simply about moving goods from point A to point
That's
B.
right.
What's interesting is to find out what happens between point A and point B because of the availability of the infrastructure. So, first of all, what kind of economic activity will be stimulated in Peru because of the port, the railways, highways, but also what kind of activity can be stimulated all over South America if you integrate the infrastructure and supply chains in the whole continent.
That's right. You have to know that, for example, in Peru, the Andes is a really, really zone where you don't have much progress, right? It's
The Andes
because they have
mountain range,
many.
you mean? Or,
That's right. So they have, for example, many agriculture, but they cannot take these products out of the Andes. And that's really difficult because they have some highways in bad conditions. And by the way, Peru, for example, there is a lack of infrastructure in about $100 billion. We need that. So we have this lack of infrastructure. So now with the railway, this corridor, we will have more investments and as well these kind of products that we have in agriculture, mining, and so on. We could now put these products in another countries. That's for us important because they could live. Our people need to sell these products and have another kind of vision as well and go on further and beyond the situation, the geographical situation. And that was one of the big problems for our continent. These people cannot live and live in poverty because they are there without any kind of possibilities to go out. I think with this, and I am talking not only about Peru, I am talking as well about Brazil, if you want, Bolivia as well. No, they are in the Andes and they cannot have this possibility because of the lack of infrastructure to go out with the products and deal with the world. That's why now we need these kind of projects.
Yeah, this is the lesson, the same lesson we know from Africa. There are many countries in sub-Saharan Africa where you have abundant land and water and agricultural
Yeah.
potential, but they cannot produce because they don't have the infrastructure and machinery, but also they would not be able to export their goods because there is no transport means, there's no refrigeration, no packaging, no logistics
And they
available.
are
And this
losing,
is a waste.
that's right. They lose a lot of money.
Yeah,
They even has to, sell the potatoes, let's say, for the same price as they
to
invest to
produce.
produce them.
Yes,
Is
yes.
zero addition. There is nothing they win in that.
Yeah,
So
and
that's
also
why
there are areas which need that these products they but they cannot get them. Like in
no,
Africa, there are countries that need these products, but they cannot get them because there's no infrastructure. And there are the countries who produce them, they waste them because they cannot get them out.
they
I
are
think the
completely
same
lost.
thing.
That's right.
I think we were in Guizhou in the province in China, which was one of the most isolated areas in
Hmm.
China, one of the poorest areas. But we saw how these massive bridges and roads and railways had transformed this whole rural area
Completely.
into
That's
an
right.
industrial area. So this is the concept of the economic belt. It brings development and industrialization. One more question is that like in African nations today are saying we don't no longer want to export our raw materials like
That's right.
copper, chrome, lithium, all these things as raw materials for a very low value. In your country and also in South America, there are lots of minerals, but of course, you will have a chance to export them as raw
That's
material.
right.
But are there plans to start industrial zones, industrial parks to process these material to semi-finished goods or finished goods as part of this
That's
whole
it.
concept?
Yeah, that's the vision. That's the vision. But till now, because of the lack of the infrastructure, we couldn't do this step beyond. We couldn't because just all these raw materials they have been selling to the world, but without any value. We didn't make this movement forward in order to change the value and give the value to our products. And we have this possibility, but nobody is going to invest in an isolated region or country, and that's the one of the biggest problems of South America. From the Andes then and the Amazonian regions, we don't have this possibility to industries go in there and invest money because they don't know how they are going to take out their products. It's going to be difficult really for them till this time. But now the mentality is changing because they see the possibility that they could invest there and as well take out their products, sell them, export them to the world. That's I think, a big step further for our countries. And now Peru and Brazil has to play this big role here in South America.
Yeah, I think one difference between the way China deals with the developing nations and what the industrialized nations were doing is that the industrialized nations will just take raw materials from the poor countries, very cheap, and then sell them back, finished goods, very expensive. In that way, there's an enormous dependency by the developing countries on the industrialized countries because they will not get the technology transfer to be able to
Hmm.
process and share, not take everything, but share the value, the added value of the products. China is not keeping that for itself. It shares it with others because China, I think, believes that if Peru or African nations and others become wealthier, this is good for China. But if they
Yeah,
remain poor, it's not good for China
no,
because
that's right.
China's plan is in the future and now is to sell tools, machine tools, and machinery and technology to those countries, not simply selling them finished goods.
Yeah, and you don't sell it to poor countries, and that's the question. We have to change this mentality as well here in South America or Latin America. We have to change the mentality, and we have to think that we need this transfer of technology. And we don't have this transfer of technology. We don't have, we need this kind of technology, new technology coming to Latin America. And this kind of projects, as this corridor, railway corridor, is one of the best things in this century that is going to foster really the development of our countries. That's it, but it comes now with another changing of mentality as well. I think the Belt and Road is coming in a really interesting moment where here as well we are changing the ways we look at it, how we could develop our economies. And I think as well is going to be suitable that in the near future we are going to consolidate this both role, an important role in South America between Peru and Brazil. That I see this, as an axis of development good for South America.
Yes. Now we come to the question of security and geopolitics. Uh, on the surface of this, and I think Hollywood is to blame for this. The vision of South America, is like banana republics. You have military coups, dictators, and the mafia and drug cartels and everything, which is not really the true picture of South America. But we are so far here, and our media does not convey any true picture. But you see, in a sense, that like in Southeast Asia, you have had not wars between the countries of South
No,
America for
no.
decades. So, what is the mindset, the philosophy that keeps that stability and peace
All right.
between the nations?
We think that Latin America is a continent of peace, and we don't have much problems, with all the countries. We could have some little situations, but not wars. And here, just we are trying to go beyond our differences, political differences, and concentrate more in, development. And that's what we are doing now. And I think, for example, why we accept here and we work, with all the pleasure with the Belt and Road Institute, all the Belt and Road Initiative, is because there is a changing in the mentality. We don't need to make any more wars. We don't need to make any kind of, let's say, criminal industries or whatever. We need to development for example, industries with technology, with all these kind of not raw materials, just with the added value to our products. That's the change of mentality in this century. And now that's why we don't have here more problems. We have some differences ideological for some countries, but it's not, it's not a big deal if we could say that. It's just a question of see that we need to go on together and see how we could go out from the underdevelopment because in many areas or regions in South America, we have these problems. So we have to give a solution, and this is one of them.
Yeah, and I think this concept of the peace and security through economic development is primary in this sense, and
Hmm.
not that you have to focus on security and then neglect economic development because it's a symbiosis. You have problems that come with poverty, with the lack of resources, with you have
That's
fights
right.
between nations over water, over food, over
Yeah, poverty attracts conflict. You know,
yeah,
that's the change in the philosophy. Poverty attracts conflicts, wars, and this kind of dictatorships. That we have now to attack poverty. And the only way to attack poverty is giving them to the people the ways to develop themselves with industries, with jobs, with work, with added value for the industry. That's the only way. That's why here we call us a continent of peace.
yeah, wonderful. We have also the question of immigration, which is a big issue in the United States. We have the same problem here in Europe, where they say, "Oh, our biggest problem is immigration from Middle East, from the conflict zones, and from Africa." But the reality is that if you have stability and economic development in those regions, then you will not have people fleeing their home. People would
That's
rather
right.
stay in their country and build their country
That's right.
and live in their country rather than fleeing to foreign lands. And this is a very important lesson. So if Europe and the United States focus on working with China to develop those countries and stabilize them through economic development, then you will not have this massive problem. And this is where
Mhm.
we have this problematic mentality now, which I would like to end with, although we should end on a positive note. But there's this the reality is that there is a geopolitical mindset which is based on the zero sum game, is that
Mhm.
Europe and the United States, but the United States especially, sees China's growing cooperation and presence in Africa, in West Asia, in South America as a threat to its national security interests.
Mhm.
And I don't know what that is really, but recently there has been, especially after the port of Chankai was opened in your country, there were alarm bells in ringing in Washington that China is encroaching on American national security interests, and there should be measures taken. But I can imagine that the United States is not going to compete with China by building even better ports and railways and industrial zones, but they are talking about some other things. How do you see this mentality in Washington about, you know, trying to prevent China from working with South America or trying to prevent South America from working with China?
Yeah, I think, we don't have to see much as a question of opposition. What I think is that the United States now has the opportunity to continue helping countries in Latin America. They have now to change as well the possibility to help them by economically, but with really, really important projects of infrastructure, working on the poverty. That's the main message I think they should get and say, okay, they are trying to build this corridor, for example. Okay, what we can do with them in order to help them as well to go on with this development, because we need as well to go out from this poverty. We have to be clear about that. The main problem here is poverty, and the poverty give us some riots, problems, and all these kind of for example, people going from one region to another is because poverty. So we have to tackle this poverty, and I think the United States is going to see these new projects as an opportunity to do the same. I think, in South America, we will be happy to see them as well and work with them. In any case, with working as well always in the development of the continent.
Yeah, well, I think this is a very, very good point to end up with, because we have to think positively. Or we don't see any conflict between China and the United States working
No.
together in South America or in the West Asia or anywhere else in Africa. I mean, we had this problematic, like China is very active in West Asia, the so-called Middle East, with infrastructure, with industry, with the trade. But then the Biden administration comes up with this idea of that India, Middle East, Israel, EU corridor, which
Hmm.
is a phantom. It does not exist. But what the effect of that we got is this enormous tragedy with Israel taking the opportunity to attack Gaza, eliminate the Palestinian question, and now we had this war with Iran, which it's nobody wins that war because they failed to contain Iran or destroy
Yeah.
Iran. They also have failed to contain the Ansarullah in Yemen, who now
Hmm.
control one of the most important navigation and shipping lines in the world. But they
Hmm.
cannot solve these problems with military means. And we can only solve these problems with diplomacy, first of all, and economic cooperation. So I think
Right.
this is a very good model, and I really think that Peru and Brazil and the South American nations will have a great. And I'm happy that there are people like you who are capable to articulate this kind of idea and philosophy. And I wish you all the best
Yeah.
with your
It,
work.
it has to be. It has to be because we have been, let's say, 20th century with all problems, with all these kind of dictatorships, and that's not good for the continent. Now the mentality has changed. There is another ways. For example, Peru is economically good. We are in a good position as well other countries, and that is the moment we could really seize to go on with this intention and vision of go out of the underdevelopment we have been passing in the last 40 years, right? Is now the moment, and I think these kind of projects with the bricks and Belt and Road are going to help enormously to our continent.
That's great. I think it's very important for people around the world to hear this from people from inside South America. That what is the mindset right now? What are the conditions for this kind of shift? Thank you very much, Carlos Jaico, for joining us from Peru and sharing with us your wonderful insights.
Many thanks, Hussein. Many thanks.
Looking forward to seeing you again.
Thanks a lot.